The metal doors of the interrogation chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Commander Tejo stepped inside, his forearms moving with practiced precision as he sealed the entrance behind him. The room was cold and sterile, designed to make prisoners feel small and helpless. Bright white light shone down from every angle, leaving no shadows where someone might hide their fear. In the center of the room sat a simple metal chair, and in that chair sat his newest prisoner. Tejo had seen many species break under his methods. The proud Zenthari warriors who screamed for their mothers after 3 days. The calculating Nexus merchants who sold out their entire trade networks for a moment of peace. The spiritual Elathi who abandoned their gods when faced with true despair. Each species had their breaking point, and Tejo knew exactly how to find it. But this was his first human. She was smaller than he had expected. The intelligence report said humans were a young species, barely worthy of notice. They had only recently developed faster than light travel and had established a handful of colonies at the edge of known space. The Valthram Empire had crushed civilizations 10 times older and more advanced. This should be simple work. The human female looked up at him as he approached. Her name was Mina, according to the capture reports. She had been working as a communications officer on Colony 7 when the Valthram fleet arrived. Nothing special about her background, no military training, no noble bloodline. Just another worker trying to make a living on the frontier. Blood trickled down from a cut above her left eye, where a soldier had struck her during capture. Her dark hair was messy and her simple gray uniform was torn in several places. Her wrists showed red marks from the energy restraints they had used to bring her aboard the ship. By all appearances, she should be terrified. Instead, she sat straight in the chair and looked directly at him. Tejo studied her face carefully. Fear was usually easy to spot. The rapid breathing, the darting eyes, the trembling hands. But this human showed none of those signs. Her breathing was slow and steady. Her eyes never left his face. Her hands rested calmly in her lap despite the obvious pain from her injuries. Perhaps she was in shock. That happened sometimes with new prisoners. The mind would shut down temporarily to protect itself from trauma. But her eyes were too alert, too focused. She was definitely aware of where she was and what was happening to her. "Do you know who I am?" Tejo asked in perfect human speech. The Valthram had excellent translation technology, and he had studied human languages extensively before this assignment. "You are Commander Tejo of the Valthram Imperial Fleet," Mina replied. Her voice was quiet but clear. "You specialize in psychological warfare and prisoner interrogation. Your success rate is nearly perfect." Tejo felt a slight surprise. Most prisoners knew nothing about their captors. The fact that she had this information suggested the humans had been studying his methods. That was interesting but not concerning. Knowledge of his techniques had never helped previous victims resist them. "Then you understand why you are here," he said, moving to stand directly in front of her chair. His full height of nearly 3 meters meant he towered over her seated form. Most prisoners found this intimidating. "You want information about our colony defenses, our communication networks, and our evacuation procedures?" Mina said. "You believe that breaking my mind will make me more cooperative." "I do not believe anything," Tejo replied coldly. "I know that every species has mental weaknesses. Every conscious mind can be broken if the right pressure is applied. Your species is no different." He began to pace around her chair in a slow circle. This was part of his standard opening routine. The circular movement created anxiety in most species as they lost track of where he was positioned. The uncertainty fed their fear. "The Zenthari thought their warrior training made them strong," he continued. "They lasted an average of 4 days before complete mental collapse. The Nexus believed their logical minds could resist emotional manipulation. They broke in 2 days. The Elathi trusted in their spiritual strength. 3 days. Mina turned, her head slightly to keep him in view as he moved. "How long do you think humans will last?" she asked. The question caught him off guard. Prisoners usually begged to know what he planned to do to them, or they tried to bargain for mercy. They did not ask about the limits of their own endurance with such calm curiosity. Based on your species development level, I estimate 2 days, he answered. Possibly 3 if you have unusual mental discipline. That seems reasonable, Mina said, nodding slightly. We are a young species compared to the others you have broken. Less time to develop strong mental defenses. Taiho stopped pacing. There was something wrong with this conversation. The human was too calm, too analytical about her own upcoming torture. Where was the fear? Where were the desperate questions about her fate? You seem remarkably composed for someone facing psychological destruction, he observed. I am scared, Mina admitted. But fear does not change what will happen. You will try to break my mind and I will try to resist. One of us will succeed and one will fail. Being afraid will not improve my chances. This practical acceptance was unlike anything Taiho had encountered before. Most species either denied what was coming or became paralyzed by terror. This human acknowledged the reality of her situation, but refused to be consumed by it. Fear is a tool, he said, deciding to begin the process early. It will become your greatest enemy. When I am finished with you, the very memory of fear will be enough to shatter your thoughts. Perhaps, Mina replied. But until then, it is just another feeling. Humans have many feelings. We have learned to live with all of them. Taiho felt the first hint of irritation. This prisoner was not responding according to any pattern he recognized. Her calmness was not the empty-headed piece of shock or the desperate bravado of someone trying to appear brave. It seemed genuine. We will see how long that attitude lasts, he said, activating a control panel on the wall. The first phase will begin shortly. I suggest you use these final moments of clarity to prepare yourself. Thank you for the warning, Mina said. As the lights in the room began to shift to a harsh red frequency designed to create anxiety and disorientation, Taiho found himself studying his prisoner more carefully than usual. Something about this human disturbed him, though he could not identify exactly what it was. He had broken thousands of minds across hundreds of species. This small, injured female should be no different. Yet as he watched her sit calmly in the growing red light, adjusting her posture slightly, but showing no other reaction to the environmental change, he felt an unfamiliar emotion. For the first time in his long career, Commander Taiho wondered if he might have underestimated his opponent. Taiho had used this technique countless times before. The mind needed rest to function properly. Take away sleep and even the strongest will would crumble within days. Bright lights blazed in Mina's cell around the clock. Loud sounds played at random intervals. Cold air blew from vents whenever her body temperature suggested she might be falling asleep. On the 3rd day without sleep, most prisoners would start hallucinating. On the 5th day, they would beg for rest. By the 7th day, they would agree to anything for just 1 hour of peace. Mina adapted. Taiho watched through security monitors as she learned to rest during the brief moments between sound bursts. She would close her eyes and slow her breathing for 30 seconds at a time. When the noise started again, she would open her eyes and wait patiently for the next break. How is this possible? Asked Commander Jinwoo, Taiho's second-in-command. They stood in the observation room looking at screens that showed Mina sitting quietly on her cell floor. After 8 days without proper sleep, she should be completely broken. Some species have unusual sleep patterns, Taiho replied, but he sounded less certain than usual. We will move to the next phase. The next phase was sensory overload. Taiho flooded Mina's cell with overwhelming input. Flashing lights strobed at frequencies known to cause panic in most species. Multiple sounds played at once: screaming, grinding metal, discordant music, and recordings of other prisoners begging for mercy. The temperature shifted rapidly from freezing cold to burning hot. Chemical smells filled the air, each one designed to trigger fear responses. Most prisoners would curl into a ball and scream until their voices gave out. The constant assault on their senses would leave them unable to think clearly or form coherent thoughts. Mina sat in the center of the chaos with her eyes closed. She is meditating, reported Medical Officer Kyung, after reviewing the biometric readings. Her heart rate is actually slower than normal. Brain scans show she has somehow learned to filter out the external stimuli. Taiho stared at the readings in disbelief. The human's vital signs looked like someone taking a peaceful nap, not a prisoner being tortured. Humans must have natural resistance to sensory disruption, Jinwoo suggested. Perhaps their homeworld has extreme environments that require this adaptation. Then we escalate again, Taiho said through gritted teeth. The third phase involved direct fear conditioning. Taiho brought other prisoners into Mina's cell, broken creatures from different species who had already surrendered completely to his methods. They sobbed and begged and told her in graphic detail what awaited her. He showed recordings of previous interrogations, letting her see exactly how other minds had shattered under his techniques. Most prisoners would break during this phase. Seeing the fate that awaited them, knowing that resistance was useless, they would give up hope entirely. Mina watched everything with quiet attention. When the broken prisoners finished their warnings, she spoke to them gently. "I am sorry for what was done to you," she told a former Zenthari warrior who had been reduced to a trembling wreck. "You were brave to resist as long as you could." The warrior looked up at her with confusion. No prisoner had ever shown him kindness before. "You cannot help," he whispered. "The pain never stops. The fear never ends. Better to surrender quickly." "Perhaps," Mina replied. "But until I must surrender, I will try to remain myself." Taiho removed the other prisoners. Their presence was supposed to break Mina's spirit, not give her opportunities to practice compassion. Phase 4 was isolation and memory manipulation. Taiho locked Mina in a completely empty cell with no light, no sound, and no contact with any living being. Isolation drove most species insane, within days. The mind needed stimulation and social interaction to remain stable. Take those away and consciousness would turn inward and destroy itself. While she sat in darkness, Taiho used Velthrim technology to probe her memories. Neural scanners mapped her brain patterns and identified key experiences that shaped her identity. Memory distortion fields began to alter those experiences, making her doubt what was real and what was false. After 2 weeks of isolation and mental intrusion, Taiho expected to find a babbling, confused wreck who no longer knew her own name. Instead, Mina greeted him calmly when he finally opened her cell. "Hello, Commander," she said, as if they were meeting for tea instead of continuing a torture session. "Do you know who you are?" Taiho demanded. "I am Mina, Communications Officer of Colony 7, she replied without hesitation. "That is not possible. The memory disruptors should have erased your identity completely." Mina tilted her head thoughtfully. "You did change some of my memories. I remember things differently now. But memories are just stories we tell ourselves. About the past, the important thing is who I choose to be in this moment." Taiho felt cold fear creep up his spine. This should not be happening. No species had ever resisted memory manipulation so completely. "You changed my childhood," Mina continued conversationally. "In my new memories, my parents were cruel instead of loving. But I decided that if my parents had been cruel, I would have learned to be kind as a reaction against their cruelty, so I am still the same person." "That is not how memory works," Taiho said, his voice shaking slightly. "Perhaps not for your species," Mina replied. "But humans are very good at making up new stories when the old ones do not serve us anymore." The 5th phase was direct neural pain. Taiho abandoned subtlety entirely. Pain inducers flooded Mina's nervous system with signals of agony. The devices could simulate every type of physical suffering without actually damaging the body. Burning, crushing, tearing, freezing. All of it experienced as completely real by the brain. Most prisoners would scream until they lost consciousness. When they woke, they would scream again. Within hours, they would beg to do anything to make the pain stop. Mina endured. Taiho watched in horror as her vital signs showed she was experiencing maximum pain, but her behavior remained eerily calm. She breathed deeply and slowly. She moved carefully but without panic. When the pain was at its worst, she would whisper something under her breath. "What is she saying?" Jinwoo asked, studying the audio pickups. "She is reciting poetry," Kyung reported after running the sounds through translation software. Ancient human verses about endurance and hope. How is she conscious? Taiho demanded. The pain levels should have shut down her higher brain functions. I do not understand it either, Kyung admitted. But somehow she is compartmentalizing the pain. She acknowledges it but does not let it control her actions. By the end of the third week, Taiho's confidence was completely shattered. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for this kind of resistance. The human female should be a drooling, mindless shell. Instead, she seemed stronger than when they had started. Perhaps humans cannot be broken, Jinwoo suggested quietly. Everything can be broken, Taiho snarled. We simply have not found the right method yet. But for the first time in his career, he was beginning to doubt his own words. Taiho stood in his private quarters staring at reports that made no sense. Every measurement showed that his techniques were working perfectly. The pain inducers were functioning at maximum capacity. The memory scramblers were operating within normal parameters. The isolation protocols had been followed exactly, yet the human remained unbroken. Sir, High Command is asking for status updates, Jinwoo said from the doorway. They expect preliminary results from the human prisoner. Tell them the subject requires extended conditioning, Taiho replied without turning around. Some species need more time. How much more time? Taiho had no answer. In his entire career, no prisoner had lasted more than 2 weeks. The human had endured 3 weeks of his most intensive methods and showed no signs of mental collapse. Double the neural pain settings, he ordered. If standard levels do not work, we will exceed safety limits. Sir, those levels could cause permanent brain damage or death. Then we will learn whether humans fear death more than they resist torture. The enhanced pain inducers were installed that same day. When they activated, the readings showed agony levels that would have killed most species from shock alone. Taiho watched the monitors, expecting to finally see the human break. Instead, Mina began to sing. Her voice was quiet and hoarse from weeks of abuse, but the melody was clear and beautiful. It was a human lullaby, something a mother might sing to comfort a frightened child. As the artificial pain flooded her system, she sang about gentle rain and peaceful sleep and love that lasted forever. Turn off the audio, Taiho commanded. The song was disturbing him in ways he could not explain. The other guards are requesting to keep it on, Jinwoo reported. They say it helps them feel calmer during their shifts. Turn it off. But even without sound, they could see through the cameras that Mina continued to sing. Her lips moved with the remembered words, and her expression remained peaceful despite readings that showed she was experiencing torture beyond imagination. Taiho decided to try psychological drugs. Velthram chemists had developed compounds that could induce any emotional state. Terror, despair, rage, confusion, all of it could be delivered directly into the bloodstream. The drugs would force the brain to feel specific emotions regardless of the victim's conscious will. They injected Mina with concentrated fear serum, enough to make a Zenthari warrior die from panic attacks. She closed her eyes and waited for it to pass. Vital signs show extreme fear response, Kyung reported. Heart rate elevated, stress hormones flooding her system, fight-or-flight reactions at maximum levels. But look at her behavior, Jinwoo added, pointing at the video screen. Despite the chemical terror coursing through her body, Mina sat quietly with her hands folded in her lap. Her body was experiencing pure panic, but her mind refused to surrender to it. How is this possible? Taiho demanded. I believe, Kyung said slowly, that humans have learned to separate their thoughts from their emotions. The fear is real, but she is observing it instead of being controlled by it. They tried depression compounds that should have made her suicidal. Mina acknowledged the artificial sadness but used the time to remember happy moments from her childhood. They used rage inducers that should have made her attack anything nearby. She channeled the anger into determination to survive. Every drug failed. Every technique proved useless. Perhaps we should try a different approach, Jinwoo suggested during their daily strategy meeting. Physical torture instead of psychological. The Empire specifically wants her mind broken, not her body, Taiho replied. Besides, if she can resist mental torture this completely, Physical pain will be meaningless to her. Then what do you suggest? Tejo was quiet for a long moment. His reputation was built on breaking minds that others considered unbreakable. If he failed with this human, his career would be over. Worse, other species might learn that resistance was possible. The Empire's entire strategy of psychological warfare could crumble. We escalate beyond normal protocols, he said finally. There are techniques we do not usually employ because they risk destroying the prisoner entirely. What techniques? Direct telepathic intrusion. Instead of using machines to alter her memories, I will enter her mind personally and tear it apart from the inside. Jinwoo looked uncomfortable. Sir, that procedure is extremely dangerous for both the interrogator and the subject. If her mind has defenses we do not understand, then I will adapt, Tejo said coldly. Bring me the neural interface crown. The telepathic intrusion began at dawn the next day. Tejo placed the interface crown on his head and activated the connection to Mina's mind. The technology would allow him to experience her thoughts directly and manipulate them with his own will. He had used this technique only twice before, both times on prisoners who had already been weakened by weeks of conventional torture. The moment the connection established, Tejo screamed. Mina's mind was not the chaotic, frightened maze he expected. Instead, he found himself in a vast space filled with warm light and quiet strength. Her thoughts were organized and peaceful. Her memories were vivid and beautiful, despite his attempts to corrupt them, and she was aware of his presence. Hello? Commander, her mental voice said calmly. I have been expecting you. Tejo tried to assert control, to force his will into her consciousness and shatter it from within. But her mind was like trying to break water with a hammer. Every attack flowed around him and left him more exhausted. You do not understand, he projected desperately. I am here to destroy you. I understand perfectly, she replied. But you cannot destroy something that refuses to be broken. You can change it, damage it, alter it, but as long as the core remains intact, the person survives. What core? Tejo demanded. Show me this thing you think protects you. Mina's mental presence smiled. The core is simply the decision to remain human, no matter what happens to us. You cannot take that away because it is not a thing you can touch. It is a choice we make every moment. Tejo felt his own mind beginning to fray under the strain of the connection. Her peaceful resistance was somehow more exhausting than violent opposition would have been. Fighting her was like trying to punch fog. Every species breaks, he insisted. Every mind has limits. Perhaps, Mina agreed. But humans have spent our entire history learning to endure impossible things. Ice ages, plagues, wars, famines, disasters. We survived all of it by refusing to give up. You are just one more impossible thing to endure. The telepathic connection snapped as Tejo's concentration finally failed. He collapsed on the floor of the observation room, blood trickling from his nose and ears. Get medical, Jinwoo shouted, rushing to help him. As consciousness faded, Tejo's last thought was a terrible realization. He was not breaking the human. The human was breaking him. Tejo spent 3 days in the medical wing recovering from the telepathic intrusion failure. When he finally returned to duty, his hands shook and his eyes held a haunted look that had never been there before. Sir, perhaps we should request a replacement interrogator, Jinwoo suggested carefully. The High Command has other specialists who might have better success with this prisoner. No, Tejo said sharply. This is my assignment. I will complete it. But privately, he knew he was lying to himself. This was no longer about completing an assignment. It had become personal. The human had done something to him during the mental connection, something that left him feeling exposed and vulnerable. He needed to prove that he could break her, or he would never be able to function as an interrogator again. What is our current status? He asked, reviewing the reports from his absence. The prisoner has been maintained in standard holding conditions, Kyung reported. No special treatments, no interrogation techniques. She has spent the time in what appears to be meditation. Meditation, Tejo repeated. Yes, sir. She sits quietly and appears to be thinking deeply about something. When guards bring food, she thanks them politely. When they check her restraints, she cooperates fully. She has caused no trouble at all. This was somehow more disturbing than violent resistance would have been. After nearly 4 weeks of intensive torture, a normal prisoner should be either completely broken or filled with rage and hatred. This calm acceptance suggested that his methods had accomplished nothing at all. "We will try a different approach," Tejo announced. "If psychological torture will not break her mind, we will break her body and see if physical damage affects her mental state." "Sir, the orders specifically requested an intact prisoner for study." "The orders requested a broken mind," Tejo snapped. "If breaking the body is necessary to achieve that goal, then we will break the body." The physical torture began that afternoon. Tejo started with simple pain compliance techniques: pressure points, joint manipulation, controlled impacts designed to cause maximum discomfort without permanent damage. The idea was to make her understand that cooperation would bring relief, while resistance would bring escalating agony. Mina endured everything without making a sound. "Say something," Tejo demanded after an hour of methodical torture. "Scream, beg, curse at me, anything to show that this affects you." "What would you like me to say?" Mina asked quietly. "I want you to break. I want you to surrender. I want you to admit that you cannot endure anymore." "But I can endure more," she replied simply. "Humans are very good at enduring pain. We have been practicing for thousands of years." Tejo increased the intensity, bone stress techniques that would leave hairline fractures, nerve pinches that sent lightning bolts of agony through her entire body, methods that pushed right to the edge of causing permanent injury. Still, Mina remained silent and calm. "This is impossible," Jinwoo muttered, watching from the observation room. "No species can ignore this level of physical trauma." "She is not ignoring it," Kyung corrected, studying the medical readouts. "Her pain responses are completely normal. Her body is experiencing everything we are doing to it, but somehow her mind is processing the pain differently." "How differently?" "Believe she is accepting the pain instead of fighting it. Most creatures waste energy trying to resist or escape painful stimuli, but humans appear capable of simply acknowledging pain and continuing to function despite it." Tejo abandoned restraint entirely. If gradual escalation would not work, he would jump directly to maximum trauma. He brought in bone breakers, devices, designed to fracture limbs in precisely controlled ways. The breaks would heal eventually, but the process would be excruciating and would leave her bones permanently weakened and misaligned. "This will cripple you," he warned Mina as he prepared the devices. "Even if you are rescued, you will never move normally again." "I understand," she replied. "Then stop this. Surrender now and the damage can be minimal." "I cannot surrender," Mina said. "Not because I am brave, but because surrender will not actually stop the pain. You will continue torturing me regardless of what I say or do because you need to prove that humans can be broken, so I might as well endure it with dignity." Her logic was flawless and terrifying. She had seen through his manipulation completely. Tejo activated the bone breakers. The devices clamped onto her arms and legs and began applying pressure gradually. Hairline cracks appeared first, then deeper fractures, then complete breaks. The sound was horrible, wet snapping noises that made even experienced guards look away. Mina bit her lip until it bled, but she did not scream. "Medical intervention required," Kyung announced as the devices finished their work. "Multiple compound fractures, significant nerve damage, blood loss approaching dangerous levels." "Fix her enough to survive," Tejo ordered. "But do not repair the damage completely. Let her heal wrong." The medical team worked for hours setting bones incorrectly, allowing breaks to mend at improper angles. When they were finished, Mina's arms and legs would never function normally again. She would walk with a permanent limp and would have limited use of her hands. Through the entire procedure, she remained conscious and alert. "Why will you not break?" Tejo demanded when the medical team finished. "What is wrong with your species, that you can endure this level of damage?" Mina tried to answer but found that her jaw had been damaged during the bone-breaking process. Speaking was difficult and painful. "Not wrong with us," she managed to say through her injured mouth. "Right with us. Humans survive by refusing to quit. Taiho grabbed her face and examined her jaw. The joint had been dislocated and several teeth were loose. When she tried to speak, her words came out distorted and slurred. "Good," he said, viciously. "Let your voice be as broken as your body." But even as he said it, he realized that he had achieved nothing meaningful. Her body was destroyed, but her mind remained intact. She still looked at him with those calm, steady eyes. She still radiated that inexplicable strength that made him feel small and weak. "One more technique," he announced to his staff. "Neural scramblers at maximum intensity. If I cannot break her mind through pain, I will simply erase it entirely." "Sir, that procedure has a 90% fatality rate," Kyung protested. "Then there is a 10% chance it will work," Taiho replied. The neural scramblers were ancient Valthrim technology, designed to completely rewrite a prisoner's personality and memories. The process was so dangerous that it had been banned from use except in extreme circumstances. Most subjects died during the procedure as their brains tried to cope with having their neural patterns forcibly altered. "If she survives this," Taiho said as he prepared the equipment, "she will wake up as a completely different person. All memories of her past life will be gone. All personality traits will be erased. She will be a blank slate that we can program however we choose. And if she does not survive, then at least she will finally be broken." The neural scramblers activated with a high-pitched whine that made everyone in the room wince. Energy fields surrounded Mina's head, probing deep into her brain tissue and beginning the process of systematic memory destruction. For the first time since her capture, Mina screamed. The sound was horrible. Not just pain, but the agony of a mind being torn apart piece by piece. Her body convulsed against the restraints as the scramblers worked to erase everything that made her human. "Brain activity is chaotic," Kyung reported, his voice shaking. "Neural pathways collapsing throughout the frontal lobe. Memory centers showing massive damage. Continue the procedure," Taiho ordered. But as he watched Mina writhe in agony, he felt no satisfaction. This was not victory. This was simply destruction. Even if the process succeeded, he would not have proven that humans could be broken through. Superior interrogation technique. He would have only demonstrated that enough brain damage could turn anyone into a vegetable. The neural scramblers shut down automatically after an hour of continuous operation. In the sudden silence, Mina hung, limply in her restraints. Her eyes were open but unfocused. Drool ran from the corner of her mouth. Her breathing was shallow and irregular. "Is she alive?" Taiho asked. "Barely," Kyung replied, checking her vital signs. "Massive brain trauma, extensive neural pathway damage, severe cognitive impairment. If she survives the next few hours, she will likely never recover basic functions." Taiho stared at what remained of his prisoner. He had finally broken her, but the victory felt hollow and meaningless. This was not the clean psychological defeat he had achieved with other species. This was just butchery. "Put her in a medical isolation cell," he ordered. "Monitor her condition and report any changes." As his staff began the process of moving Mina's damaged body to the medical wing, Taiho wondered if he had finally learned what it meant to break a human, or if the human had actually broken him instead. 3 days passed before Mina showed any signs of awareness. Taiho visited the medical isolation cell each morning, hoping to find either a completely broken shell of a being or a corpse that would end his torment. Instead, he found something that defied all logic and medical understanding. Mina was healing. "The neural pathway damage is regenerating," Kyung reported during the morning briefing. "Not completely and not in the original patterns, but new connections are forming faster than we have ever documented in any species." "What does that mean for her mental state?" "Unknown. The brain scans show activity in areas that should have been permanently destroyed. But the patterns are unlike anything in our medical databases." Taiho reviewed the readings himself, searching for some explanation that made sense. The neural scramblers had definitely caused massive damage. Entire sections of Mina's brain had been effectively erased. Yet somehow other areas were compensating and creating new pathways to replace what had been lost. Is this normal for humans? Jinwoo asked. How could we know? Taeho replied irritably. This is our first human prisoner. We have no baseline for comparison. On the fourth day, Mina opened her eyes and spoke. Hello, Commander. Her voice was different now. The neural damage had affected her speech centers, leaving her words slightly slurred and hesitant. But the tone was unmistakably calm and aware. Taeho rushed to her bedside, hardly believing what he was seeing. Do you know who you are? He demanded. Mina considered the question carefully. I am not entirely certain, she admitted. Many of my memories are gone or changed, but I know that I am human, and I know that you have been trying to break my mind. Your name? Taeho pressed. Do you remember your name? Mina, I think, but it feels like a word I learned rather than something I have always known. Perhaps that person is gone now. Then I have succeeded, Taeho said, feeling a mixture of relief and disappointment. Your original personality has been destroyed. Has it? Mina asked thoughtfully. I feel different, certainly. Some things that were important before seem meaningless now, but the essential parts remain. What essential parts? The decision to remain human, the choice to endure rather than surrender, the commitment to treat others with kindness even when they do not deserve it. Taeho felt his brief moment of victory slip away. Those are just abstract concepts. Without your memories and personality, they mean nothing. Do they? Mina struggled to sit up in the medical bed, her misshapen limbs making the movement awkward and painful. I may not remember my childhood or my training or my reasons for being on Colony 7, but I remember what it means to be human. You remember what you think it means, Taeho corrected. Without your original memories as context, you are just guessing. Mina was quiet for a long moment, considering his words. When she spoke again, her voice held a note of something that might have been pity. Commander, I think you do not understand what being human really means. Then explain it to me. Being human is not about having specific memories or experiences. It is about how we respond to impossible situations. You have spent weeks trying to prove that humans are just another species that can be broken with enough pressure, and I have proven exactly that. Have you? Mina asked. Look at me carefully. My body is destroyed. My memories are gone. My original personality may have been erased entirely. By every measure you care about, I should be completely defeated. Taeho studied her damaged form. Her arms and legs were bent at wrong angles where the bones had healed incorrectly. Her jaw was misaligned, giving her face an asymmetrical appearance. Her eyes showed the slight unfocus that indicated permanent neural damage. You are defeated, he agreed. Yet, here I sit, still choosing to be human, Mina replied. Still refusing to hate you for what you have done. Still believing that endurance has meaning even when it accomplishes nothing practical. That is just biological programming. Instinct. Is it? She managed a crooked smile with her damaged mouth. Then why does it terrify you so much? The question hit Taeho like a physical blow. He stepped back from her bedside, his forearms trembling slightly. I am not terrified. You are terrified because you have realized something terrible, Mina continued gently. You have thrown everything you had at me. Every technique, every method, every forbidden procedure. You have broken my body and scrambled my brain and stolen my memories. Yes. And I am still here. The simple words hung in the air between them like an accusation. Taeho wanted to argue, to point out all the ways he had successfully damaged her, but he found himself unable to speak. What you fear, Mina said softly, is that being human is not something that can be taken away from the outside. You cannot break it, because it is not a thing that exists in memories or personality, or even in the physical brain. Then, where is it? It is in the choice we make each moment to remain ourselves despite everything that happens to us. You can change our bodies, alter our memories, scramble our thoughts, but as long as we keep choosing to be human, we remain human. Taeho sank into a chair beside her bed. The implication of what she was saying was staggering. If that is true, he said slowly, then psychological warfare is useless against your species. Not useless, Mina corrected, just incomplete. You can damage us, certainly. You can make us suffer terribly. You can even kill us. But you cannot make us into something we choose not to be. The other species define themselves differently. Their identity comes from memories, traditions, social structures, things that can be attacked and destroyed. But humans learned long ago that all external things can be lost. So we placed our identity in the one thing that cannot be taken from us, which is the decision to keep going no matter what. You call it stubbornness. We call it being human. Taeho sat in silence for several minutes, trying to process what this meant for everything he had built his career on. If humans truly could not be broken in the traditional sense, then the Empire's entire strategy for dealing with them was flawed. "Why are you telling me this?" he finally asked. "You could have let me continue believing I had won." "Because," Mina said, struggling to find words with her damaged speech centers, "humans do not win by making others lose. We win by surviving impossible things and then teaching others how to survive them too." "You want to teach me how to survive?" "I want to teach you that survival is not about avoiding damage or pain. It is about deciding who you want to be after the damage is done." Taeho looked at her twisted body and slurred speech and brain-damaged thoughts, and for the first time began to understand what she meant by strength. "The High Command expects a report," he said eventually. "Then tell them the truth," Mina replied. "Tell them that humans cannot be broken because breaking is not defeat for us. It is just another thing to endure and heal from." "They will not believe me." "Then show them," she suggested. "Let them see what a broken human looks like." As Taeho prepared to leave the medical cell, he realized that Mina had accomplished something remarkable. She had not just survived his interrogation, she had taught him something about the nature of strength that would change him forever. Taeho was in his quarters reviewing his report to High Command when the ship's alert system began screaming. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in pulsing red as the automated voice announced what everyone had thought impossible. "Hull breach, on decks 7 through 12. Human vessels detected. All crew to battle stations." Taeho rushed to the command center where chaos reigned. Display screens showed dozens of human ships moving with impossible speed and precision through the Velthrim fleet. Their weapons cut through shield systems like they were made of paper. "How did they find us?" Jinwoo demanded, studying tactical readings that made no sense. "We are 3 sectors deep in Imperial space." "Their technology," Captain Dongmin reported, from the weapons station. "It is far more advanced than our intelligence suggested. These are not the primitive vessels we encountered at Colony 7. Impossible. The humans barely achieved interstellar flight 50 years ago." "Tell that to their ships," Dongmin replied grimly. "They are jamming our communications, disrupting our navigation, and their weapons are unlike anything in our databases." Through the observation windows, Taeho could see the battle raging around them. Human fighters moved like schools of fish, coordinating their attacks in ways that suggested they had learned from every encounter with Velthrim forces. "They are not fighting like the humans we captured," Taeho observed. "These tactics show deep understanding of our weaknesses." "Sir," Communications Officer Soman called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the lead human vessel." "Put it through." The voice that filled the command center was calm and professional, speaking perfect Velthrim with only a slight human accent. "Velthrim vessel, this is Admiral Park of the Human Colonial Defense Force. We know you are holding one of our citizens. Release her immediately, and we will allow you to withdraw peacefully." Captain Dongmin looked to Taeho for guidance. In the strict hierarchy of the Empire, the prisoner was technically under the commander's authority rather than ship operations. "Tell them we do not negotiate with inferior species," Taeho ordered. "Sir," Soman replied hesitantly, "our shields are already at 60% and falling." Their weapons are specifically designed to counter our defensive systems. How is that possible? Admiral Park's voice came through the communications again, as if he had heard the question. Commander Taiho, we know exactly who you are and what you do. Every technique you have used, every method you employ, every psychological weakness you exploit. We have studied all of it. The transmission paused, and when it resumed, the Admiral's tone had changed slightly. You see, Commander, the prisoner you have been torturing for the past month and a half was not just a communications officer. She was one of our most experienced intelligence operatives, specifically trained to resist interrogation and gather information about enemy capabilities. Taiho felt the blood drain from his face. That is impossible. Our scans showed no signs of advanced training. Because she was trained not to show those signs, Admiral Park replied. While you were trying to break her mind, she was studying yours. Every technique you used, every weakness you revealed, every moment of doubt or frustration, all of it was carefully observed and transmitted to our forces. The neural damage, Taiho whispered, understanding flooding through him. The memory alterations. If she was an intelligence operative, you destroyed some of her memories, certainly, but the important ones, the training and mission parameters, were stored in protected sections of her mind that your equipment could not reach. What you saw as mental breakdown was actually successful intelligence gathering. The ship shuddered under another barrage of human weapons. Shield generators throughout. The vessel began to fail as the attackers found and exploited weaknesses that should not have existed. How long has she been transmitting? Jinwoo asked quietly. Since day one, most likely, Taiho replied, pieces of the puzzle falling into place. Every time we tried a new technique, she was learning about it and sending the information back to her people, which means they know everything about our psychological warfare capabilities, not just the methods we used on her, but our entire approach to breaking other species. The implications were staggering. The Valthram Empire's greatest weapon had always been their ability to destroy enemy morale without extensive military campaigns. If the humans could counter those techniques and teach other species to resist them. Sir, we have been boarded, Security Chief Juan reported over the communication system. Human soldiers are moving through decks 9 and 10. They know exactly where they are going. Of course they did. Mina would have mapped the entire ship during her imprisonment, noting guard rotations, security protocols, and the location of critical systems. All units converge on the detention levels, Taiho ordered. We cannot allow them to reach the prisoner. Sir, Somin interrupted. The human admiral is requesting to speak with you directly. Put him through. Commander Taiho, I want you to understand something important. This rescue operation is not about saving one person. It is about demonstrating that humans do not abandon their own no matter what has been done to them. The admiral's voice carried a note of cold anger that made Taiho step back from the communication console. Your empire has built its reputation on the idea that every species can be broken if enough pressure is applied. Today, we are going to prove that assumption wrong. One human does not represent an entire species, Taiho replied, trying to maintain some semblance of authority. You are correct, Admiral Park agreed. One human represents something much more dangerous to your empire. She represents proof that your methods do not work on us. And once the other species in the galaxy learn that psychological warfare can be resisted, the transmission cut off as another wave of human fighters swept past the observation windows. In the distance, Taiho could see other Valthram ships beginning to break formation and retreat. The entire battle group was being systematically dismantled by forces that should have been vastly inferior. Sir, the human soldiers have reached detention level 7, Juan reported. They are requesting the prisoner's location. Taiho closed his eyes. He could order his security forces to fight to the death, but what would be the point? The humans had already won the moment they proved their techniques could not break one of their own. Tell them she is in medical isolation cell 3, he said quietly. Sir? Tell them. And order all security personnel to stand down. But Commander, the battle is over, Juan. We lost the moment we underestimated what it means to be human. 20 minutes later, Taiho stood in the corridor outside, medical isolation cell 3, and watched human soldiers prepare to extract their operative. They moved with professional efficiency, but he could see the anger in their faces when they saw what had been done to her. The soldier in charge, a man whose uniform identified him as Colonel Kim, looked at Taeho with barely controlled rage. 47 days, he said quietly. 47 days of torture for information she never had and secrets she could not reveal. She was gathering intelligence, Taeho replied. This was all part of her mission. The intelligence gathering was secondary, Colonel Kim corrected. Her primary mission was simply to survive whatever you did to her and prove that humans cannot be broken by your methods. The medical team finished preparing Mina for transport. Her body was placed on an anti-gravity stretcher, her twisted limbs carefully secured to prevent further damage during movement. As they began to wheel her toward the exit, Mina's eyes opened and found Taeho standing in the corridor. "Commander," she said through her damaged jaw, the words barely intelligible. Taeho approached the stretcher expecting some final curse or expression of hatred. Instead, Mina struggled to lift one of her misshapen hands toward him. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For teaching my people what we can endure, for showing us how strong we really are, for giving us the knowledge we need to help other species resist your empire." Her hand fell back to her side, exhausted by the small effort. "You cannot know what you have done," Taeho said desperately. "The information you gathered, the weaknesses you revealed, it will destabilize our entire system of control." "I know," Mina replied with something that might have been a smile. "Humans are very good at breaking systems that depend on breaking others." The medical team resumed moving the stretcher toward the exit. Colonel Kim fell into step beside them, but he paused to address Taeho one final time. "Your empire built its power on the assumption that everyone has a breaking point," he said. "Today you learned that assumption is wrong. Some people do not break. They bend, they adapt, they endure, but they do not break. And if they do not break, then the system that depends on breaking them will eventually break instead." Taeho watched the human soldiers disappear around the corner, carrying with them the wreckage of everything he had believed about strength and weakness. In the sudden silence of the empty corridor, he found himself thinking about Mina's words. She had thanked him. After 47 days of systematic torture, after having her body destroyed and her mind scrambled, she had thanked him for the experience. Not because she had enjoyed it or because she forgave him, but because enduring it had taught her people something valuable about their own capabilities. Humans, he realized,